After last night's attack, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise said Congress will shift its schedule this week to take up legislation to support Israel and, quote, hold Iran accountable. Joining us now, Democratic Congressman Gregory Meeks of New York. He's the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Welcome, Congressman.
Congressman, before we get into what is likely to happen in Congress this week, we just had our colleague Andrea Mitchell on, and she reported about a conversation between President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu, where the President of the United States urged the Prime Minister of Israel to exercise restraint, to not retaliate against Iran. If Netanyahu does not heed that warning from President Biden, where does that then leave the United States?
Well, I think that the president was very clear, and I'm thankful that Joe Biden is the president of the United States right now and not Donald Trump, because he's the adult in the room. The president was clear. We are ironclad, locked in with Israel for their self-defense. But we do not want an offensive. We don't need to escalate this. We need to make sure that we have containment and then de-escalation. And then there's got to be a movement forward as far as conversation and diplomacy is taking place so that, Iran, I think, out of this should have learned that the United States stands with Israel. Ironclad. Israel's going to have the right to exist.
Ironclad, there was a but, though, in your statement. So what happens if Netanyahu doesn't listen to Biden on this question of retaliation?
Biden said ironclad in your defense. In your defense. Mm-hmm. So no offensive movements in that regard. So what should take place here is that there is a recognition from Iran. Israel has the right to exist, and a recognition. What Joe Biden has been saying all the time is to developing and having a two-state solution with the Palestinians. Now, that sets us up for a different Middle East. We already have individuals who had been like Iran previously, quite frankly. When you look at Egypt, Jordan, now, we're talking to Saudi Arabia about normalization with Israel. Israel's right to exist. So we have a moment in history right now to change what has been taking place in the Middle East for the last 75 years. For the last 75 years, it has been the Gulf countries just trying to wipe Israel off the map. And so the Israelis have to defend itself. And that's why we stood and will continue to stand, that they have the right to defend themselves. We've also got to acknowledge the right to have a two-state solution. That's the way to peace and diplomacy. And that's what Joe Biden has been talking about from the very beginning. He's been talking about two-state solution. And we're ironclad with Israel's right to defend itself. Anybody who attacks it, we will be there with Israel to prevent it from happening. And that's what happened yesterday.
Congressman Meeks, Simone Sanders here, Townsend. The president said yesterday, President Biden, in a White House statement that tomorrow, which is now today, he issued this statement late yesterday, that I will convene my fellow G7 leaders to coordinate a united diplomatic response to Iran's brazen attack. My team will engage with their counterparts across the region, and we will stay in close touch with Israel's leaders. And while we have not seen attacks on our forces or facilities today, we will remain vigilant to all threats and will not hesitate to take all necessary action to protect our people. I think Democrats, Republicans alike can all agree that Iran is no friend of the United States and is a real threat to not just the region, but to us. That is what is happening diplomatically from other world leaders. Italy has already sent out the call to convene that meeting. Congress is allegedly, you all are going to take up some type of legislation this week. Congressman Scalise has said that the legislative calendar is now changing and that in his statement yesterday that they would start with Israel. Do you have any indication that the package that will be taken up will be a package that the Senate passed that includes aid to Israel and Ukraine? Is this just aid to Israel? And if so, what kind of message does that send to our Ukrainian partners?
The only package that we should be taking up, the only package that I will support is the package that was passed in a bipartisan way in the Senate. That a package the package that includes giving Ukraine what it needs to defend itself, giving Israel what it needs to defend itself, giving the Taiwanese what it needs to defend itself, and having humanitarian aid for the individuals in Gaza and around the world. That's the only thing that can pass, and that's needed right now. And the only way that you can get something on the president's desk so that all of those items, the Israelis, the Ukrainians, the Taiwanese, and humanitarian aid, the only way that you can do that immediately is pass one bill, the one that was passed in the Senate. That could be on the president's desk. We pass it, tomorrow night when we get back in. It could be on the president's desk first thing Tuesday morning, and that is what's needed. One bill, nothing else.
What, Congressman, efforts have been made or put in place to get the Foreign Affairs Committee members briefed up on what's happened so far, what the administration is thinking in terms of moving forward? We've got the forward-facing position of the administration in terms of what we've already discussed, no acceleration but deceleration of tensions and attacks here. But what are you expecting in that briefing? What types of questions do you have still so that you can have a better understanding and clarification on what the U.S. next steps should be? And that, again, ties into Simone's question about the types of aid packages that should be going forward afterwards.
So I will say that the administration has been, first in a classified manner, keeping me informed on the imminent danger of the attack by Iran, so that they had messaging and we were prepared for it, and that they would be moving certain equipment, et cetera, there to make sure that we knocked it down and we defended Israel. And we've gone back and forth. I've been communicating with my colleague, the chair of the committee, Michael McCall. We've been talking on the phone back and forth, trying to make sure, my purpose is that we are staying on the same page to talk about passing this bipartisan bill that came out the Senate. And so we've been talking in that regard, and we'll continue. I hope to have another conversation with him. I've been talking to my colleagues on the Democratic side of the committee. We've gathered and we've had some meetings and conversations among ourselves, and we've been trying to make sure that we update one another. I've been sending out any messages that I'm getting out that's not classified to my colleagues, so that when we get back to Washington tomorrow, we'll have an opportunity. I've requested a meeting, in fact. I've requested and asked for the opportunity at its earliest convenience to have a classified meeting with the White House to talk about what has taken place, what they're looking at, and where we're going from here. I think that's important to do. And I think that as a result, again, all that I have received thus far, I will say again, thank God that the President of the United States is Joseph Biden.
All right, Congressman Gregory Meeks, thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you coming in. New this morning, Iran warning Israel there will be larger attacks on its territory if there is any retaliation after yesterday's attacks. Also, Iran sending a message to the U.S. Bases will be targeted if Washington backs any Israeli retaliation. Joining us now is Evelyn Farkas. She's the former senior advisor to the Supreme Allied Commander Europe, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Russia, Ukraine, and Eurasia, and former senior fellow for the Atlantic Council. Also with us, former CIA and Department of Defense Chief of Staff Jeremy Bash. Welcome to you both.
Welcome. Jeremy, I want to start with you and pick up where Richard Engel left us off last hour, essentially talking about the root of what we saw yesterday goes all the way back 2 weeks ago, 13 days, as Andrea Mitchell noted, to the attack, an Israeli attack on Iran in Damascus. Why would, at the point in time that we find ourselves in the world with Hamas at Israel's doorstep, why would Israel take such a step? And as Richard Engel suggests, that folks in the region have noted, is that what Netanyahu wants is the wider conflict with Iran. What say you, Jeremy?
Well, Simone, there's a view inside Israel, and I think inside many in the U.S. national security community, that Iran really is the reason why there's been so much instability in the Middle East. So if you look at not just the October 7th attacks, where, of course, Hamas is a proxy of Iran, receives funding from Iran, but also all of the violence perpetrated by Iranian Shia militia groups against U.S. forces, killing 3 U.S. troops back at the beginning of this year, attacking ships via the Houthis in the Red Sea. Iran is really the reason why there's so much conflict in the region. And so Israel is saying we got to kind of go to the head of the snake, and the head of the snake is the leadership of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. It's the same reason why the United States, under the previous administration, took out Qasem Soleimani in December 2019. But in that case, I think Iran believed we can't take on the United States. They're too formidable of an ally. And I think they believe that Israel may be on its back heels from the perspective of international public opinion. And so they've done something unprecedented here. They've launched attacks against Israel's homeland inside Israeli territory. We've never seen that overt, massive attack by Iran against Israel before in history.
I will note senior U.S. officials coming into the Biden administration, we were doing all these kind of briefings, and everyone would say the same thing, that Iran is the greatest threat to the United States.
Evelyn, national security NSC spokesperson Kirby, who was on Meet the Press with our colleague Kristen Welker, and she asked him about what has transpired in the past 24 hours. Take a listen.
What's your response to Americans who see those missiles being intercepted in the skies overnight and believe that this has already escalated?
I would ask the Americans that saw what happened last night to take heart in terms of the military capability of their forces in the region, how they are defending themselves and defending our interests in the region. And also, I reiterate what I said before. Know that the president is working the diplomatic side of this personally.
It's that last piece from Kirby that I want to pick up on, the president working the diplomatic side of this personally. Your sense of what that looks like, the resources that the president has at his disposal?
Yeah, Alicia, I mean, we know right from the very beginning, from going back to October, when the attacks occurred on the Israeli people, launched from Gaza by the Hamas terrorists, who, of course, are Iranian proxies, that right from the beginning, President Biden wanted to make sure that the conflict that was coming, because, of course, we knew Israel would have to take action to root out those terrorists, he wanted to make sure that the conflict would not spread further. We saw Iran's proxies, though, spreading the conflict. We saw the Houthis trying to cut off maritime commerce in the Red Sea. We saw Hezbollah attacking Israel. But all along, if you paid close attention to what the administration was saying and doing in terms of putting U.S. forces, stationing forces in the Middle East, surging forward there, if you will, mostly on the sea and in the air, we were essentially saying to Iran, keep this at a low simmer. And just one other point, back in January, the Israelis assassinated a high-level Hamas leader in Lebanon. And at that point, we were really afraid that Iran might take action like this, or maybe not exactly like this, but Iran might take escalatory action. And actually it didn't. The word, according to press reports, was that Iran told its proxies to cool it, and they decided not to take action at that point in time.
Jeremy, you had the Russian foreign minister calling for restraint after this attack, noting that we express our extreme concern over another dangerous escalation in the region. Russia's foreign ministry said in a statement on the Iranian attacks, we call on all parties involved to exercise restraint. How do you assess the Russian assessment of this matter? Do you think they're just going to sort of hold back? Are they going to lean in? They're going to sort of get in Iran's ear a little bit and say, okay, you guys just need to bring it down a notch? How do you see Russia playing a role to some extent in this?
Great question. I actually think Russia has zero credibility. They've gained a lot of support from Iran. In fact, many of the drones on the battlefield in Ukraine are Iranian Shahed drones. Some of the similar drones that Iran launched last night against Israel. And I think actually Russia prefers Iran to stir the pot in the Middle East. It takes world attention away from Russia, Ukraine. You see, obviously, this Ukraine bill stalled on Capitol Hill. Russia's kind of enjoying seeing that play out. And as far as Russia's concerned, they would much rather have the United States and the international community focused on a conflict between Israel and Iran than the conflict in Ukraine.
That makes a lot of sense because you have this idea now that this space is narrowed and moved in a different direction away from the pressure to bring dollars to support Ukraine. And so Russia doing a little profiling here and saying everybody needs to settle down, and the U.S. don't get too headstrong. Iran, don't you get too headstrong, trying to play that sort of middle space when they're really kind of happy that they're not getting the fresh start.
I mean, it is, Evelyn, on the point that Jeremy just made, you have President Zelensky of Ukraine who tweeted about the drones. He said Ukraine condemns Iran's attack on Israel using Shahed drones and missiles. We in Ukraine know very well the horror of similar attacks by Russia, which uses the same Shahed drones and Russian missiles, the same tactics of mass airstrikes. There is a story that posted around 1 a.m. in the Washington Post this morning that talks about the drones that saturate the sky over Ukraine looking for any movement. And as every day goes by that Ukraine has not received the aid from the supplemental package, and just to be clear, the aid is money that would go to the Pentagon to buy weapons that are made in America to send to Ukraine. They slip deeper and deeper into peril on the front lines.
Yeah, Simone, this is Zelensky clapping right back at the Russians. He's like, yeah, you guys don't want escalation. You guys are the ones who are working with Iran on all of this. I mean, frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if later we found out in the history books that Russia was tipped off about the Hamas attack, maybe not exactly on the date in October when they launched it, but that the Russians were more than happy to let their Iranian friends and the Iranian proxies do what they had to do, or what they thought they had to do, vis-a-vis the innocent Israeli civilians. So, Russia has blood on its hands. These missiles are also being, not missiles, rather, the drones are also being manufactured now in Russia. So the Iranians not only are giving drones to Russia, but they've helped them set up factories. The Russians, I understand, have actually made those drones even better. The Ukrainians, I was there 2 weeks ago, and we felt the barrage of drones and artillery. So this is very real every day for people in Ukraine, this Iranian drone threat.
Jeremy, I hope you will take this question in the spirit in which I am asking it, which is, who, if anyone here, believes they benefit from regional escalation?
Nobody believes they benefit from regional escalation except for, I think, the leadership of Iran. I mean, Iran believes that for internal purposes, if they can focus on an external enemy, the quote-unquote Zionist enemy or the great Satan in the United States, then that potentially fortifies their leadership. I mean, they are autocrats. They rule over a population of people who don't want to be led by the theocracy in Tehran. And so there have been revolutions. There have been green revolutions. There have been other demonstrations in the streets. We know the treatment against women by the Iranian regime. So I think, they need an external enemy in some ways to keep and maintain control in Iran. And they're picking on the smallest country in the region, the American ally, the country that sort of doesn't fit in with the other countries there. And they believe that's going to maybe fortify their regime. But it's not going to work because America's got Israel's back, and these defensive measures thwarted this attack almost completely.
Evelyn, the president is convening the G7 partners today and conversating with them to update them. Also, I think, to put together some level of diplomatic response and maybe some level of coordination over the next week. How do you assess, what we may see coming out of that conversation with our G7 partners?
So it's sort of, Michael, related to the couple of questions you guys just asked, because I think that Iran actually doesn't want this to escalate. I don't think, just like the January episode, this time they used an attack directly on Israel, which is escalatory. But remember, they said, okay, we consider this now done. We're done now. So now the worry is, what is Israel going to do? I think that the administration managed to convince Netanyahu, fingers crossed, because there were thankfully very little in the way of casualties. I think just one injury, that Israel will not escalate, will not strike back directly at Iran, hopefully. But I think the G7 needs to really buckle down and get this situation under control. So I think Biden's saying to our allies, listen, we need to provide assistance to Ukraine. We need to provide assistance to Israel. We need to provide assistance to Taiwan. All these things are interconnected because the bad guys are working together. It's not just Russia and Iran working together. China's helping Russia with its war effort. And of course, North Korea. So it's really important for the democracies of the world, the strongest economies, to stick together and work diplomatically to resolve this, use our military deterrent and our economic power to do so as well.
Developing overnight, House Speaker Mike Johnson, one of the Republicans most responsible for Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election, met the former president to cast doubt on the 2024 election, stoking fears about something that is already illegal. A warning, what you are about to watch and hear is a lie.
There's so many millions of illegals in the country that if only 1 out of 100 voted, they would cast potentially hundreds of thousands of votes in the election.
Okay, so here are the facts. The Conservative Heritage Foundation found 89 instances of legal action involving non-citizens voting between 2003 and 2023. 89 instances over 20 years. Joining us now, former Illinois Congressman and 2020 presidential candidate Joe Walsh. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Joe. So, Joe, the lies just keep coming. They just keep coming. And the fact is, Heritage, the pantheon of conservative,
no liberal think tank.
Yeah, exactly. These guys laid it out. They did the study. 89 instances of illegal immigrants voting in elections. So why do they continue to perpetuate the lie? What is the end game here, aside from Johnson going down to get some cover on his behind? But the reality of it is they're there to promote the setup for 2024, right? Am I wrong? Am I missing something?
They're trying to scare the hell out of Donald Trump's supporters. The end game is violence. It's absurd, right, that Donald Trump is talking about election integrity. But, Michael, the scary, serious, dangerous point is Trump wants violence. He did this in 2020. I'll never forget. When I was in my talk radio days in May of 2020, he first said, before the election, either I will win or it will be stolen from me. He's doing that now.
On steroids.
And what he's doing is he's fomenting again anger and unrest among his supporters so that if he loses, there will be violence. Think about what I just said. The Republican nominee for president, Michael, wants there to be violence if he loses.
And this is the space we're in. So,
yes.
So what's the countermeasure? What do we see are countermeasures? Simone has got the look. Simone just gave me the look.
To crazy trying to steal an election? What is the counter? What is the countermeasure to the false claims? What is the countermeasure to the lies? One can argue truth and light, honey, but I don't know. He keeps telling it. This is I feel like I say this all the time. It's insane because it is not legal to vote if you are not a citizen of the United States of America.
Right.
Congress has they already passed legislation for that way back before, I could even, go to school, okay?
Right.
Back in the 90s, I think they did this. Right, Michael? I don't know. Michael's old enough to be my father. We joke about this all the time.
Yeah, sure.
So now, according to, after, Donald Trump and his insurrection buddy, the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, after they had their meeting, now apparently House Republicans are going to pursue legislation requiring proof of citizenship to vote. My question is, so we're going to show proof to Miss Susie at the polling place? How is Miss Susie going to verify? Are we asking people to bring their papers? This is America. So I just want to know, is this what all of the House Republicans want to lay their chips on, even the 18 that sit in districts that Joe Biden won in 2020?
What strikes me is this is the long tail of a long-time Republican effort to make it harder to vote, because they know that some of those requirements, you know, having to show a license, they disproportionately impact communities of color, and what's interesting to me is they also disproportionately impact older Americans.
Oh, yes,
right?
yes,
so,
yes.
and that's the part that you would think that Republicans would be more attuned to strategically.
But I think the bigger, broader, scarier point, Alicia, is this is all to breed distrust in our elections process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, make no mistake, I still engage with the Republican Party base every single day. I know 70 to 80% of them don't believe Biden really won. But that hardcore base, the 40 to 50%, they no longer trust our elections. Trump is doing this on purpose. Distrust then will lead to violence. It happened in 2020.
Let's just zoom out, though. Can we talk about why Mike Johnson is visiting the president at Mar-a-Lago and the position he finds himself in? I mean, we could have forecasted this when he took over the speakership.
Yeah, because he's weak.
He's weak.
And the strongest...
By design.
By design. The weakest person, the strongest person in the United States Congress today is Marjorie Taylor Greene, not him.
Well, strongest Republican.
Yeah, strongest Republican.
Because I would argue, I almost called him Speaker Jefferson. It might as well be Speaker Jeffries in quotes.
The strongest Republican in the caucus is Marjorie Taylor Greene, not Mike Johnson. And everyone in the room knows it. So he goes to Mar-a-Lago, very much like Kevin McCarthy had to go to Mar-a-Lago to get the appropriate blessings so as to save the bacon. Now, the reality of Kevin McCarthy was he went down after January 6th, but he couldn't go again because Donald Trump was done with him. Mm-hmm. And right now, Donald Trump sees probably Mike Johnson as a much more useful player for him than Marjorie Taylor Greene. Because if he wanted him gone, he would have just unleashed the Kraken, and Marjorie Taylor Greene would have put that bill in with privilege, in which case the seat would be vacant. So there is a little bit of that kind of effect that Donald Trump has, but the reality for Johnson is he needs Trump more than Trump needs him.
He's weak and Trump is strong. When McCarthy went down there right after January 6th, that was weirdly one of Trump's weakest moments.
Right.
And McCarthy still went down there.
And gave Trump the power.
And the credibility. Can we just talk for a minute how remarkable it is that an unelected individual, is currently holding the reins to the United States Congress. Donald Trump is not the president. I have to keep saying, I can't even believe I have to keep saying, what is going on? Donald Trump is not the president. Yet, with one social media post, because we can't call it a truth, but I guess that's what we call it as posts now, truths. With one post on his social site, with one phone call, he can append what the caucus is doing. I did Meet the Press Now yesterday, and I was sitting next to Mark Short, who, before he worked for Pence as the chief of staff, he was the Leg Affairs director at the White House under Trump. And I was like, oh, I forgot about that, Mark. And he said that he would wake up some mornings and Donald Trump would have tweeted while he was president, and he's got members calling him saying, well, why? I thought he supported the bill. Why is he tweeting this? So it's like Groundhog's Day. But Donald Trump, the caucus is allowing Donald Trump to run them, and they're not getting anything out of it. They're not passing any legislation. Heck, he tanked the FISA stuff this week, and it wasn't even the right FISA. Like,
can you walk us through the TikTok of that? Because when you come to this question of the fact that he's trying to make this election about Joe Biden's mental acuity, when in reality it is Donald Trump who continues to get confused about things. So 2018,
we have a graphic.
Yes, he brags. Just signed the 702 bill to reauthorize foreign intelligence collection. This is not the same FISA law that was so wrongly abused during the election. Then on Wednesday, he writes, kill FISA. It was illegally used against me and many others. They spied on the campaign. And as you have Fox News pointing out, he confused Section 702 with Title I. I mean, he's not even clear on what he's doing.
He has no idea what he's talking about. He's not the president, but we've never been here before. He's the leader of the party. And my former party, Michael, your current party, is a cult. And he is the cult leader. And because he has this hold on the base, period. And every other Republican is afraid of that.
So, Joe, what does the landscape look like going into November, knowing that you have a party that is all about lying to the public I'm going to say broadly, it's not just their base. So I think we need to disabuse ourselves of thinking that, this is just only being heard by his base. It's a broader effort to lie to the public, to set up a violent end to this campaign. What should or could we be doing now to reinforce what's happening in states around the country with secretaries of states and boards of elections who are trying to shore up to avoid the very thing that Donald Trump and certain Republicans want to have happen?
It happened. It will happen again. Something like January 6th will happen again. And so, Michael, as you said, all of the elections officials around the state, the secretary of states around the country, and I think Joe Biden's got a tough spot, is in a tough spot because he's got to defeat Donald Trump. But the Democrats have to kind of lead on this and take this mantle. Again, it's all about saving democracy because it really is under threat. I think it's an opportunity for Democrats, Michael, to expand this coalition to save this democracy. And this is part of it. Trump is calling for violence. Think about that again. One of our nominees for president wants there to be violence if he loses. Do you think Joe Biden would want that if he lost? Hell no. And we've never had this.
And that's the thing. You said it the last time you were with us. This is not normal.
I went to bed that night.
Right. This is not normal.
Here's how Politico's legal editor describes this historic moment. The fact is that no other person in America, if charged with a diverse panoply of malfeasance that Trump has been accused of, would enjoy the same procedural and structural advantages that Trump has harnessed to great effect as his legal troubles reached a fever pitch over the past 12 months. Michael Cohen is back with us.
So, Michael, the interesting part for me in all of this is Donald Trump himself in this context, that now he's saying that he absolutely will testify. He's going to be in the courtroom. Now, I could have some thoughts about his presence there as a defendant. Yeah, he should be there. But we know that that's more of a prop for him, a stage for him. How do you assess what Donald Trump is saying about being in the courtroom, having him there, you on the stand? That's a dramatic moment, and I think it'll be interesting to see him have to deal with the very people who worked with him, both outside of the presidency and inside of the presidency, now sitting in a witness chair saying, yeah, everything that the prosecutors are saying, that happened.
Yeah, well, first of all, he has to be there as a criminal defendant. He has to be there. That's part of the process. But the likelihood of Donald Trump being on the stand is equal to the likelihood of me waking up tomorrow 7'6" and playing center for the New York Knicks. It's not going to happen. How many times have we heard the same story again and again and again that, I want to testify. Absolutely. I'm going to, I'm going to tell the truth. The one thing that, every time Donald opens his mouth, that something non-truthful is coming out of it. We also know that he's not a good defendant. He's not a good witness. We watched that with the E. Jean Carroll case when he couldn't even identify E. Jean Carroll and confused her with Marla Maples. He is not a good witness. He's not going to take the stand. In fact, I hope that I'm wrong, because I think that would be absolutely classic for America to be able to see Donald Trump on the witness stand trying to defend himself in a case that's indefensible.
Well, the most interesting, I wish that America could actually see these proceedings happen. How they will view this is through sketches, through hearing from people like yourself. Hopefully you'll come back after you take the stand. I'm just going to ask right now on national television. Just box them in real quick. That's how we do it. And then they'll hear from the reporters and whatnot who are in the room. And I think we'll also see from Donald Trump's social feed. This, though, and I said it when we came out before we went to break, you went to prison because you were the facilitator of these payments. That is a misdemeanor. Just for Donald Trump to participate in falsifying business records and all of that, that is a misdemeanor under New York law. What makes this a felony that the DA's office is alleging is, in fact, that because it was to cover up an underlying crime. He's not being charged for that underlying crime, but the underlying crime is because he didn't want people to know because he thought it would interfere with the election. I think about John Edwards, and I know this comparison has been made previously, but John Edwards, who was a presidential candidate, it was found out that he had a love child, a baby, with someone who worked on his campaign, and his donors were paying for that woman's lifestyle, her home, everything, and went to court. A jury of his peers, it was a mistrial because on the count of that was it an illegal cover-up, election corruption, they said no. But everything else, the jury couldn't come to a conclusion. Are you concerned that that could potentially happen here?
No. First of all, the facts and circumstances surrounding the John Edwards case versus Donald Trump are very, very different. Very different facts and circumstances. Yeah, there's an element to it which is similar, but it's not the same. It's not the same case at all.
So you're not concerned that the jury, you think that the evidence
I'm not
is so
concerned because
overwhelming.
I'm not the prosecutors. This is their case. I am merely a subpoenaed non-party witness. If they called me tomorrow and said, you know what, we'd rather you don't even testify, I'd say thank you. I can now go and start my life. I mean, I'm still on paper. I couldn't get Judge Furman, within which, despite the Bureau of Prison, my probation officer acknowledging, yeah, let him off. It's like there's no reason for it. There's like 6-7 months left. He refused to do it. Okay, whatever. It's one trust fund baby, protecting another trust fund baby. I don't care at this point. The facts and circumstances are what they are. And again, it will come out at trial. And again, I am merely, along with a dozen other people, I'm just a witness.
Let me ask you, you said you're not excited about having to testify. This is a big week for you. I feel like there's been a lot of build up to this moment, and I wonder if it's not excitement that you're feeling, what it is you're feeling going into this.
Well, I hate to say this, but I think the American people, for at least the first week, maybe 2, I'm still a believer that voir dire is going to be 3 weeks. And everybody said, no way, no way. Watch what Todd Blanche and Susan Necheles do. They really know how to stretch out the system.
Jury selection.
Yeah, jury selection is voir dire. It's going to be a little anticlimactic on Monday because everybody's thinking it's the start of the case. Yes, technically it's the start of the case, but it's not. This is just the process for jury selection, which is not
complicated.
It's complicated, but it's not exciting, right? America wants excitement. This is sort of like becoming almost like the Donald Trump reality show, and it's not supposed to be. This is our democracy that's on the line right now, and I think we have to take the case seriously, which is this is a serious matter. Whether you think that the January 6th insurrection or the Mar-a-Lago document case or the Fani Willis case are more grotesque abuses of the law, irrelevant. This case is equally important, and it does and will, in my opinion, ultimately hold Donald accountable.
You gave me a very male answer to an emotional question, which is how are you feeling going into this week?
Stressed, nervous. There's a swath of the American populace that are so knee-deep into the cult of Donald Trump. The attacks are relentless because that's what he does. He attacks the judge. He attacks the judge's daughter. He attacks witnesses. He attacks anyone and everyone. Again, thinking that this is a positive strategy. It doesn't work. So, yeah, I'm concerned and a little apprehensive.
Welcome back to The Weekend. In just 48 hours, Donald Trump's first criminal trial will officially begin as jury selection gets underway in a Manhattan courtroom. Now, we call this the hush money trial, but it really should be called the 2016 election interference case, because Trump is accused of falsifying business records to cover up his alleged affair with Stormy Daniels, which was about to come out weeks before that election. Last night, Trump said he absolutely plans to testify. This after 4 failed attempts to delay the trial over the last week. Joining us now is one of the potential star witnesses in this case, Donald Trump's former personal attorney, Michael Cohen. He's the host of the podcast Mea Culpa and Political Beatdown. He's also the author of Revenge, How Donald Trump Weaponized the U.S. Department of Justice Against His Critics, and Disloyal, a memoir.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Big week
Good
for
morning.
you.
I'll tell you, the nice and cozy table here.
That's another way to say small.
I call it cozy.
Our colleague Lisa Rubin has often described the role that you are likely to play in this trial as, yes, a witness, but more of a narrator, more of a tour guide, with other people stepping in, filling in the gaps, documents that will support what you're saying. How do you see your role in this upcoming trial?
Exactly the same way as Lisa. Just because the media wants to portray me as the key witness, I don't care what they call me. That's what I am. I'm the narrator of the story. The narrator of the story that's going to be explaining the documentary evidence as well as the corroborating testimony. You see, one of the things that Donald and his legal team are trying to do is every day it's to discredit me. And they think that that's a winning strategy for getting an overturn of whatever conviction that a jury may or may not determine. That's not the way that you run a trial. Have your own defense. The defense is not to attack the witness, but that's what they think is going to be the successful result for them.
So let's pick up on that, attacking the witness, because it is part of the overarching narrative. And I've made this point, as many have, that a lot of this is to frame a witness like yourself, Michael, as not credible because, okay, yeah, you got in trouble for lying before, so you're going to be lying now. But we know that that's not the case because you've been judged by the court to be credible in this case. How do you think does that square with the jury? Because really, it doesn't matter what any of us at the table or outside with our audience thinks about you and your credibility. It's what the 12 people who are going to be listening, as well as the alternates about you as a witness as you narrate this story. How do you position yourself relative to that conversation?
I position myself as a witness who is not excited. I want to be clear about that. I am not excited.
You're not looking forward to this.
No, I'm not. I am a subpoenaed non-party witness to it. Somewhere along the line, the narrative by the media about Michael Cohen's credibility. You know, a buddy of mine sent me this thing, which was like the bubble of 1,000 lies is popped by one truth. I don't care how the media wants to portray him. He's credible. Whatever happened in the past, whatever I had owned, and the things that I claim I shouldn't have been charged with, is irrelevant in this case. The prosecutors are going to put forth their case. And as Alicia was saying at the beginning, I'm just the narrator. And rest assured, Alvin Bragg and the prosecutorial team over at the District Attorney of New York's office would not have brought this case unless they thought that they were going to be successful.
But Trump wants to put you on trial.
Right. And somewhere along the line, somebody has to inform Donald that he's the defendant in this case. I sat in his seat a couple of years back, and I know what it's like. I wish that there was somebody that I could have gone ahead and blamed for everything. It's always somebody else's fault when it comes to Donald Trump. Never his. It's always somebody else's. I'm not the one on trial. He is.
You told Politico, you did a Q&A with Politico magazine that came out on Friday, and you talked about how you plan to defend yourself in this trial as you are, because you know they're going to attack you on cross-examination. And you also said that people should prepare to be surprised. You said, I wish that when people state that you lied to Congress, you do me the courtesy of finishing the sentence. What's the sentence? That I'd done that really for the benefit of Donald Trump. You go on to say, people, this is all people know is the headlines, and this is much more than the headlines. I went back and I read the statement of facts and the indictment way back when Alvin Bragg when this first barreled onto our radar here. And he noted in this that AMI admitted in a non-prosecution agreement that they made a payment to the source of a story to ensure that the source did not publicize damaging allegations about the defendant before the 2016 presidential election and thereby influence that election. Is that part of what you mean when we should prepare to be surprised? Yeah. I know you're going to say, I can't say much.
I'm so sorry that you took so much time to read the documents, but you're right. I can't answer that. I don't want to risk the prosecutors, the trial and their evidence that's
Is that because AMI might be? I mean, mean, this was in the public documents. So
right.
we haven't heard a lot about AMI.
We have not. So let's allow the prosecutors to do what they need to do, because this is bigger than Michael Cohen. It's bigger than Simone, right? Where I would love to answer everybody's questions, because, like I said, I think that there are going to be quite a few surprises that come out. When we were talking about a second ago, I would appreciate if people would finish the sentence. And what is the sentence? We're talking about my lie to Congress. And Donald likes to call it perjury. It was not perjury. I never pled to perjury.
Right. You fill in that it is for the benefit of Donald Trump.
It's also what the lie was. The number of times that I claimed to have spoken to Donald about the failed Trump Tower Moscow real estate project. I stated before the Senate Select Permanent Committee on Intelligence the number 3. The true answer was 10. And I say that over and over and over again because I want people to understand. If you think that that's the lie that's going to knock me out of the, let's just say, the good graces of the jury, I think that you would be wrong.
Michael, who, based on your understanding, is the most important witness in this case who is not Michael Cohen and is not Donald Trump?
I think it's everybody, because I believe that everybody's testimony corroborates everybody else's testimony.
So more specifically, what do you think Hope Hicks has to offer?
Again, I don't want to go into what I believe is going to be some substance of the prosecutor's case, but Hope Hicks is a corroborating witness, just like all the others, just like David Pecker, just like...
How about Madeleine Westerhout?
Madeleine Westerhout. I believe.
Do you know Madeleine Westerhout?
I do. She was the gatekeeper to Donald's office when he was president.
The thing that strikes me about all of this is the other little subtext conversation in the politics is, the Democrats are coming after Donald Trump. These are all Republicans who are going to be witnesses and speaking, people in his direct orbit. How does he manipulate that narrative so successfully? What is it in the sauce that people are taking in that they think, that some actually think that this is all a setup by the Joe Biden White House, even though this began long before Joe Biden became president?
So the term is Donald deflection. That's what he does. He deflects. He knows that he weaponized the Department of Justice against his critics, myself included, with an unconstitutional remand. So what does he do? Deflect it, push it off. It's the Biden administration, right? They're weaponizing the Justice Department against me, right. And so on and on and on. It's the same thing over and over again. Poor Donald the victim. He's now being, the target of the Biden administration, and people start to repeat it. It's very Stalin, right? You repeat the lie again and again and again until ultimately the lie becomes the truth.
So what does it mean then to have a Hope Hicks come on the back end of that lie, right? Trying to make it the truth, to come in and go, oh, no, that is a lie. This is the truth.
Sure. It means the same thing, for example, as David Pecker coming in, who has been involved in the catch and kill schemes going on over 2 decades before Hope Hicks even knew Donald Trump. So it all corroborates one another's testimony. It all corroborates the documentary evidence. You see, he knows what's coming at him. It's not like he doesn't know what documents are going to be used. Right. It's called discovery, right? And it's all turned over, despite, of course, the Southern District of New York's blunder, right, with 100,000, documents, none of which really has any relevance, which, again, delay tactic. But what you end up having now is, Donald knows he can't win on the documentary evidence. And so what does he have to do? I remember in moot court, I had a professor that used to always say, if you can't dazzle them with your brilliance, baffle them with your BS. Mm-hmm. And that's what he's doing. He's trying to muck up the water so that there's a chance that he can get maybe something on appeal, or maybe he could interfere with at least one juror to get a hung jury.
we mentioned it a little earlier this morning. We had former Congressman Joe Walsh here, and he noted that he wishes this case wasn't the case going first. This is something that is regularly, discussed across the country. Definitely here in D.C. Oh, there are other cases that are stronger. This is not the strongest case. We laid out at the top of this hour that it's been called a hush money case, but this is about in election interference, covering up the fact, concealing these affairs, because Donald Trump allegedly didn't want it to come out before the election. What do you say to people that say, again, this is not the strongest case, sans about not talking about your credibility, but just the facts of this case, that people will not care about payments to to an adult film star?
What I say to them is, number one, why are we now handicapping cases? This isn't the Kentucky Derby. This is our democracy, right? Why is it? Sure, I will acknowledge that the January 6th insurrection is a more grotesque abuse by Donald Trump of the law. I'll acknowledge that the same holds true for the Mar-a-Lago documents, the top secret documents that he would not return and so on, and his understanding of the Presidential Records Act is completely absurd. I'll acknowledge even that the Fani Willis case may be more grotesque. But let me assure you and all the viewers that if it was you in this specific case, we'll call it the campaign finance violation case as opposed to the hush money case, though the president and the porn star certainly has a better television ring than campaign finance violation.
It's given a Lifetime movie for sure.
It sure does. You would be already charged. The case would have already taken place, and you would be incarcerated. So if we really believe that we're supposed to be a country where the law applies equally to everyone, which I think we all acknowledge it really doesn't. We're not even a two-tier system of justice. We're really three tiers. There's for all of us, the average people, then there's those in power, and then there's Donald Trump, who seems to be able to skirt the law whenever he wants and however he wants. I don't acknowledge what these folks are saying, and as far as I'm concerned, whatever holds him accountable, I'm okay with.
That's good. It works.
In a little more than 24 hours, Donald Trump will become the first ever U.S. president to stand criminal trial. And I don't think that's fazed him, because he is still attacking witnesses, including his former fixer, Michael Cohen, and that's despite a gag order. Joining us now is MSNBC political analyst and senior executive editor of Bloomberg Opinion, Tim O'Brien. Tim knows more about the former president than most.
So Tim, it's good to have you. And as we know, the one constant in the universe is Donald Trump attacking, just fill in the blank. And he's always at it. In this upcoming trial, though, he's maintained that he didn't do anything wrong, and that, I acknowledge that I gave Michael Cohen some money, but I didn't know what he was doing with it. I didn't know where he was putting it. But we had Michael Cohen on our show yesterday to talk a little bit about this upcoming trial and the fact that Donald Trump wants to make him the bad guy, the one who's actually the one who should be on trial. Let's take a listen to some of that. Trump wants to put you on trial.
Right. And somewhere along the line, somebody has to inform Donald that he's the defendant in this case. I sat in his seat a couple of years back, and I know what it's like. I wish that there was somebody that I could have gone ahead and blamed for everything. It's always somebody else's fault when it comes to Donald Trump. Never his. It's always somebody else's. I'm not the one on trial. He is.
Despite the deflections, the blaming, it's somebody else's fault, Donald Trump is the one who's behind, is going to be sitting in the chair tomorrow in front of while they're impaneling a jury in front of a judge. Talk a little bit about what that means for him. Despite everything else he's tried to do to avoid this moment, it's here and accountability begins.
Well, it's been very interesting, Michael, over the last 10 days or so, how this escalated frenzy to keep delaying the beginning of this case has just gone, from hotter to boiling point, because Trump doesn't want to sit where he's going to be sitting on Monday. And to me, it indicates that there might be more evidence introduced in this trial that he and his defense attorneys are aware of, that he thinks is very damning. There's already a damning fact pattern. Remember, he begins allegedly his affair with Stormy Daniels about, I think, 3 months after he has just had a son with his wife, Melania. So at a personal, familial level, it's disgusting. In terms of responding to allegations that he paid off Stormy Daniels to stop speaking about this, he's been all over the map. He originally, while he was first confronted with this, said he didn't do it. Then he acknowledged there was a payment. Then he said again that he didn't do it. And then a tape recording came out of him guiding Michael Cohen to talk to his CFO, Alan Weisselberg, about the payment. So both on a personal level and an evidentiary level, it's damning for him. And I don't think under oath in a courtroom, presented with the fact pattern, presented with documentable evidence, he's going to be able to go into the same kind of performance art that he engages with publicly when he attacks judges and I think tries to get involved with witness intimidation, as he's done over the last couple of days. And a very skilled prosecutor will be able to fillet him on the witness stand. And that's something I think his defense attorneys are probably wrestling with right now. He is a very unpredictable and unreliable witness. And I think this is going to be 4 to 6 weeks or so of I think, public shaming for him that he's not used to in a confined setting with skillful prosecutors. And I think he's very aware of that. And that explains a lot of the recent temperature around this.
To your point about performance art and the amount of pressure that he finds himself under, he has been out on the stump. I'm not going to make our listeners listen to Donald Trump this early in the morning, but he said, like all true communist show trials, this is what you call a communist show trial. And we're going communist. Don't kick yourself. Mind you, none of the syntax makes sense. We don't win this election. This country is finished. He is trying to use this. He understands now the courtroom becomes his campaign trail to ramp up his supporters.
Well, and you know, what institution or civic process in America has Donald Trump not tried to poison? You know, he is the most overtly racist president and candidate we've ever had. He has attacked universities, the media, and of course the courts. And in the process of that, he's trying to suggest to everyone that something is so deeply fundamentally broken in the United States that he's the only person who can fix it. And along the way, he's being victimized for being a hero. When actually, at the end of the day, he is this tragic comic criminal, an outlaw, who I think challenges the rest of us to respond to the better angels of our nature and not succumb to the dialogue he routinely tries to introduce. And I think that that is one of his weapons, is that, like a salesman, he will constantly stay on the most horrific messages about what America is about.
You know, Tim, as we noted, as Michael noted in the intros, less than 24 hours, I think 12 hours actually and counting until this case really gets underway. But we're not going to see any witnesses take the stand on Monday or even later on this week. This is the start of this trial is really a jury selection. But Donald Trump will be in the courtroom for that. What are you going to be watching for on Monday, understanding that what we will glean and see from what's in that courtroom will come from readouts of the great journalists and the reporters in the room, will come from sketches. There will not be cameras in the courtroom to televise these proceedings.
Well, it might just be a little bit boring for starters. The first inning might be kind of boring, Simone, because it is jury selection. You know, however, Trump has routinely complained that he can't get a fair hearing in New York, that he can't get a fair, collection of jurors who are going to be open-minded about the prosecution that he's facing. I think the reality is, I think that, the American judicial system with the jury in this case will rise to the occasion. And I think that once we get past some of the early machinations around this and the trial actually begins, that's where the rubber will really meet the road. And I think the witness list is very interesting. Hope Hicks is being called as a witness. Hope Hicks at one point early on in this episode provided cover for Trump, either willingly or unwillingly. But she said what happened didn't happen. And it's interesting to me to watch whether or not she has had a crisis of confidence in herself, as many people in Trump's orbit often do, and wants to use this venue to come clean. I suspect Trump suspects some of that is coming.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.